On a Tuesday morning in December 2016, the Chamber of Ekiti State House of Assembly in Ado-Ekiti sat to receive the presentation of the 2017 budget by the state governor. Everywhere in the world, this presentation would usually unfold with predictable solemnity. But what happened on this day was neither predictable nor solemn. Governor Ayodele Peter Fayose arrived at the assembly complex not in the agbada or three-piece suit that other Nigerian governors customarily wear to such occasions, but in military camouflage. He did not obtain any military sanction to wear the attire. There was no ceremonial justification. When he was asked why he chose to dress that way, his response was that he wanted to signal the political war he believed was being waged against the opposition by the federal government of late President Muhammadu Buhari. This episode, more than any single budget figure or policy document, captures the essential nature of Fayose's politics. In a state whose other governors have tended towards restraint, technocratic ambition, and studied institutional propriety, Fayose has consistently been something else. As far as his admirers are concerned, he is the governor who is more genuinely present. Whether that presence constituted effective governance remains one of the most contested questions in Ekiti 25 years of democratic history. For those who might be hearing his name for the first time, Peter Ayodele Fayose was born on 15th November 1960 in Ibadan, Oyo State. He is of Ekiti origin, from Afawa Ekiti, in Irepo Odun local government area. But Ibadan is where he spent his formative years, where he attended St. Leo's Catholic Primary School beginning in 1966, and where he would later complete a higher national diploma in biological sciences at the Polytechnic Ibadan, graduating in 1987. His national youth service was completed at Pepsi Nigeria Limited, also in Ibadan, where he worked in the maintenance and servicing of medical and laboratory equipment. Before politics, Fayose had built a business career as the Chief Executive Officer of Populist Investment Limited, a hospitality and transport enterprise. He understood cash flow, was comfortable in informal economic settings, and grasped instinctively that for many Ekiti citizens, the legitimacy of a government resided less in its policy architecture than its capacity to produce visible and tangible benefits.
I will discharge my duties.
I will discharge my duties
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability,
Faithfully
faithfully,
and in accordance with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
and in accordance with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
In 2003, he became the second civilian governor of Ekiti State, defeating the incumbent Niyi Adebayo in what was widely regarded as an upset. He was impeached in October 2006 on allegation of gross misconduct, an impeachment that the Supreme Court would later, in 2014, declare invalid. He returned to contest again in June 2014, defeating Kayode Fayemi, who was then seeking re-election. His second tenure ran from October 2014 to October 2018.
Fayose is reportedly the only politician in Nigerian history to have defeated two sitting governors twice at different times. And that record speaks not merely to personal ambition, but to an enduring political strength that his detractors have repeatedly underestimated. There's something about his relationship with the Ekiti electorate, particularly with his rural and lower income constituency, that's proven more durable than the policy program of technocratic governors like Fayemi. And I think understanding that relationship requires examining in some details what he actually did with power when he had it.
Fayose's most consequential political philosophy that consistently attracted both executive enthusiasm and public attention was neither infrastructure nor the knowledge economy, but what Fayose himself termed stomach infrastructure.
Stomach infrastructure is the welfare of our people. Some people are in the hospital. They cannot eat without getting well. We look out for people whose bills are not too high to be paid, who are detained in the hospital, having financial issues. We take care of that. When you are leaving the hospital, when we pay for your bill, when we pay your bills, we still give you another 10,000. I have SA, I have PA, stomach infrastructure. Without stomach, you'll be dead. Though. It doesn't matter the book you've read or the knowledge you have. The stomach of a man is the way to his life.
He did not invent this phrase, but he could be credited as the one who transformed it from a pejorative label into a governing philosophy encompassing a range of direct welfare disbursements to citizens. In December 2014, at the beginning of his second tenure, Fayose distributed a reported 100,000 bags of rice, 80,000 chickens to Ekiti residents at Christmas. The figure, reported across several national newspapers, was simultaneously celebrated by his supporters as evidence of a governor who remembered the poor and ridiculed by critics as a cynical substitution of handouts for development. The budget allocated monthly stipend of 5,000 to approximately 10,000 less privileged people across the state's 16 local government areas. A former government department was established with the responsibility for the program. Artisans received disbursement of 50,000 each in microcredit, and civil servants at the annual civil service week received cash gifts and bags of rice in addition to their regular salaries. He described the distribution of 30 million naira in rice and cash to tailors, artisans, food sellers, and beer sellers as an act of targeted empowerment. The question of whether stomach infrastructure constituted genuine social policy or sophisticated electoral management, or perhaps more accurately, both at once, is one that analysts have debated without resolutions. Fayemi's administration, in his first tenure from 2010 to 2014, had operated what its architects described as a comprehensive investment program. Fayemi's interventions were designed to build institutional capacity rather than distribute goods personally. What Fayose did was structurally different. The transaction between governor and citizens was direct, personal, and immediate, and was understood by both parties to be so. Whether that directness represented a higher or lower form of democratic accountability is a question that different traditions of political thought answer very differently.
Do you agree? That's what I'm saying to you. Party politics is about interest. Everybody judge is interested in that position.
In the chairmanship of the...
Exactly. So who is aggrieved and who is not aggrieved? The first thing is
among Ekiti governors, no one has been relentlessly present in the national media as Fayose. This is not a casual observation, but a structural feature of his political method. During his second tenure, and particularly in the years 2015 to 2018, Fayose appeared on national television and radio with a frequency that had no precedent in the state's gubernatorial history. His special assistant on public communication and new media, Larry Olanyika, operated as a full-time press operation, issuing statements and press releases at a pace that kept Fayose's name in circulation on days when his principal had nothing particularly newsworthy to announce. The contrast with his contemporaries is instructive. Niyi Adebayo's communication style was characteristically legal, precise, measured. Segun Oni governed with an aversion to unnecessary controversy. Kayode Fayemi, despite his academic profile, operated as a technocrat in his public communication. Fayose's language was of an entirely different register. He described the EFCC under Buhari as the most corrupt organization in Nigeria. He portrayed Buhari as presiding over a rotten government. He compared the political situation in Nigeria to the eve of one-party state. He told the Ekiti State House of Assembly during one of his budget presentations that he was effectively the speaker and that the actual speaker was merely holding the position on his behalf. But this sustained media presence was not, as critics sometimes implied, merely an expression of personal vanity or political recklessness. It served as a strategic function. It became, as one Nigerian Tribune analysis puts it, the lone voice crying against the many shenanigans of the APC Buhari administration. But political communication is not only spoken, it is won, performed, and embodied. In Nigeria, where the agbada, the three-piece suit, and the carefully chosen headgear constitute a visual grammar of power and status, what a governor chooses to wear to official function carries meaning that attentive observers decode instinctively. By this measure, Fayose has consistently been a statement. The military camouflage budget presentation has already been noted, but it was part of the pattern. Fayose regularly appeared at public events in casual attire that other governors would not have worn to such official functions. He was photographed in open collar shirts, informal blazers, and on occasion in attire that signaled deliberate indifference to the sartorial expectation of the executive class. It would be simple and wrong to conclude that Fayose's outlier status reflects merely his personal flamboyance, while his peers represent some purer or more legitimate tradition of democratic governance. Each of Ekiti State's other governors has carried limitations that Fayose's career, in its own oblique way, has thrown into relief. What Fayose exposed perhaps more clearly than any other figure in Ekiti's democratic history is the distance between the state's former governor's ambitions and the material conditions of a significant portion of this population. His career did not resolve that distance, it dramatized it. By the time Ayodele Fayose handed over the Ekiti governorship to the APC Kayode Fayemi in October 2018, having watched his preferred successor lose the election in circumstances he publicly attributed to federal interference, his political career appeared to have reached, if not its end, then at least a significant interruption. The EFCC was waiting. His party was weakened. His rhetorics, which had functioned for 4 years as the soundtrack of the opposition, no longer had the gubernatorial immunity that made its most provocative register safe to perform. He eventually faced trial, his legal battle continuing through the early 2020s. He has not ceased to seek relevance. He appeared on channels television as recently as April 2025, warning PDP governors about the political dangers of underestimating Nyesom Wike. He weighed in on Oyo State politics in December 2025. He was expelled from the PDP in November 2025 alongside Wike, following the party's convulsive internal crisis in Ibadan. He recently tweeted about the planned removal of Olubadan by the Oyo State governor. Even out of office, he remained unmistakably present. The career of Ayodele Fayose illuminates several features of Nigerian democracy that might otherwise remain implicit. The most important is perhaps the specific sociology of Ekiti State. Ekiti has long been celebrated as a land of honor and integrity, a state whose citizens take pride in educational attainment and whose political culture has been shaped by a tradition of teachers, clergy, and professionals. That same electorate produced Fayemi and Fayose. Alternating between them with apparent inconsistency suggests that Ekiti's political sociology is more complex and more homogeneous than the stereotypes allow. There are Ekiti voters who respond to governance framework and policy pillars. There are also Ekiti voters who respond to the felt presence of a governor who came to their village at Christmas with rice and chickens. These populations overlapped, and their preferences are mediated by economic conditions, by the legacy of past promises unfulfilled, and by the judgment about who can be trusted. The question that Fayose's career poses to Nigerian politics and which admits of no comfortable answer, is whether it represented a deviation from normal democratic development or something that Nigerian democracy, particularly at the subnational level, will continue to produce. The conditions that created the policies of Fayose have not materially changed. If anything, the rise of social media has amplified the premium on exactly the kind of direct, personal, emotionally resonant communication at which Fayose excelled. As new faces prepare to contest the next generation of Nigeria gubernatorial elections, some will look at Fayose's career and see only its controversies, the camouflage, the impeachment, the EFCC charges, the legislative theatrics. Others, perhaps more numerous than political commentary tends to allow, will see something else. A governor who spoke in a language he understood, who came to their communities rather than summoning them to his office, who was present on their television screens in a way that no bureaucratic document or policy framework ever managed to be. Whether that style of politics fades as Nigerian institution matures and its middle class expands, or whether it deepens as economic frustrations seek ever more vivid expression, may be the central question of a country's subnational democratic policy in the decades ahead.
One of the few times Fayose dressed formally to government function was in 2018, when he presented his last budget to the House as the governor of Ekiti State. He arrived the House in a flowing agbada, a white flowing agbada, and he framed that dressing as his presidential look, because he had the ambition to contest for presidency at the time. He did told Nigerians that he was going to contest for president, but it's been 8 years since he said that. Until today, nothing is known of his presidential ambition.
Furthermore, we must be mindful of the fact that our party needs a candidate like me with a penchant for defeating incumbents. I said the party needs a candidate like me who has penchant for defeating incumbents.